The first time Kai Rennick saw her, she was standing barefoot in the red dust of Valus Prime, staring at the twin moons like someone who had forgotten what hope felt like. The Eladrin girl didn't flinch when the desert winds tore at her thin cloak or when the sound of his ship's engines broke the silence. She just kept staring, her silver eyes catching the moonlight like cold fire. Kai hadn't come here for rescues. Valus Prime wasn't the kind of place people came to save lives. It was where they came to bury them. The planet was a dumping ground for the unwanted, the disgraced, and the politically inconvenient. The Eladrin exile standing before him had clearly been all three. He didn't know her name then. Didn't know the list of charges the Eladrin High Council had thrown at her. All he knew was that she didn't belong in a place like this. Not with a face that still carried something untouched by the cruelty of this galaxy. "What are you looking at?" he called over the wind. Her gaze shifted, slow and deliberate, to meet his. "Stars," she said, her voice quiet but steady. Trying to remember which ones still matter. That should have been the end of it. He had cargo to pick up, a schedule to keep, and absolutely no reason to involve himself in the mess of someone else's exile. But something about the way she said it, like someone who had been watching the night sky for too long, hoping it would speak back, it hooked into him. It wasn't until the next day, when the Eladrin patrols arrived, that he learned her name, Liara Vesh. The name carried weight, even out here. The patrol captain spat it like poison. "You'll hand her over," he told Kai, his scaled fingers resting casually on the grip of his sidearm. "She's not to leave this world. By decree of the council." Kai didn't answer right away. His instincts screamed at him to walk away. The Eladrin didn't forgive trespasses, and anyone caught defying their decrees didn't usually live to regret it. But Liara was standing just behind him, her cloak pulled tight, her eyes fixed on the sand like she'd already accepted her fate. He hated that look. "She's not my passenger," Kai said, his tone neutral. "And this isn't my business." He started toward his ship, his boots crunching over the dry ground. But when he reached the ramp, he paused, turned, looked at her again. There was a flicker in her expression then. Not hope exactly, more like the last spark in dying embers. "Get on board," he said. The patrol captain's voice sharpened. "You will regret this, human." "Yeah," Kai muttered, guiding Liara up the ramp. "That's what they keep telling me." By the time the ship broke atmosphere, the patrol's warning shots had already faded into the distance. Liara sat in the co-pilot's seat, silent, watching the stars through the viewport. She didn't ask where they were going. She didn't thank him. She just kept watching. It wasn't until they reached deep space that she spoke again. "You don't know what you've done," she said. "Story of my life," Kai replied. "You want to explain?" She turned her head slowly, those silver eyes unblinking. "They will come for me. And now, they will come for you." "Yeah, I figured," Kai said. "But here's the thing. I'm harder to catch than you think." Her lips twitched, almost a smile. But the moment passed, and her gaze drifted back to the stars. The next 3 days passed in uneasy quiet. Liara slept little, ate less, and spoke almost never. Kai didn't push. He'd hauled enough fugitives in his time to know you couldn't force trust. But it was the fourth night, when they dropped out of FTL near the trade hub of Arden's Reach, that everything changed. The message came through on a priority channel, encrypted but easy enough for Kai's ship AI to crack. It wasn't from the Eladrin. It was from the Galactic Union's Central Command. "Kai Rennick," the voice said, deep and clipped. "You are ordered to turn over Liara Vesh to Union custody immediately. Failure to comply will result in charges of treason." Kai leaned back in his chair, glancing at Liara. She was leaning against the wall, eyes closed, but her jaw was tight. She'd heard every word. "You've got a lot of people interested in you," he said. "They don't want me alive," she murmured. The words hung between them, heavy as gravity. That night, Kai didn't sleep. He sat in the pilot's seat long after Liara had retreated to the crew quarters, staring out at the endless scatter of stars. Somewhere out there, war councils were deciding her fate. Maybe his too. The smart thing would be to hand her over. Collect whatever bribe or bounty came with it. Walk away clean. Instead, he found himself charting a course for the outer fringe, a place where the Union's reach was thin and the Eladrin's influence even thinner. He didn't know why he cared. Maybe it was the way she looked at the stars. Maybe it was because something about her exile didn't add up. Either way, he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't ready to let fate decide for them. The trouble was, fate had already noticed. The fringe was a tangle of uncharted lanes, old mining stations, and settlements too stubborn to die. Kai's ship, the Solace, slid through its darkness like a shadow. Every now and then, a streak of light from some distant freighter would cross their path, but for the most part, they traveled alone. Liara kept to herself, moving through the corridors of the ship like a ghost. She avoided eye contact, avoided questions, and sometimes Kai wondered if she was even real, just some fragment of a dream the desert had left in his mind. It was on the 7th day that the first sign of pursuit appeared. A blip on the sensors, faint at first, then steady. Whoever it was, they were matching speed. Kai didn't tell Liara right away. He adjusted their course, switched to passive scans, and waited. But the blip stayed. By the time he finally told her, she didn't look surprised. "Eladrin?" he asked. She nodded once. "They won't stop." He studied her calm, steady voice, the way she didn't flinch. "You're awfully composed for someone who's being hunted across half the galaxy." "I've been hunted before." The words were simple, but the weight behind them was not. An hour later, the blip split into two. Reinforcements. Whoever was following them wasn't improvising. They had a plan. Kai cursed under his breath, cutting the Solace's power to drift into the shadow of a nearby asteroid belt. The massive chunks of rock tumbled slowly, their jagged edges catching the faint light of a distant sun. It was a dangerous place to hide. One wrong move, and the hull would tear open like paper, but it was better than open space. They floated there in silence, listening to the creak of the ship. Liara stood near the viewport, her gaze fixed on the darkness outside. "Why do they want you dead?" Kai finally asked. She didn't answer at first. Her silver eyes reflected the asteroid's cold light. "Because I saw something I wasn't meant to see." He waited, but she didn't elaborate. The tension broke when the comms crackled with an open transmission. A voice Kai didn't recognize, smooth and sharp as a blade. "Pilot of the Solace, you have something that does not belong to you. Hand over the Exile, and we may consider letting you live." Kai muted the channel and looked at Liara. "Friends of yours?" Her expression didn't change. "They're not here to negotiate." He sighed, fingers drumming on the console. "Then I guess we're not handing you over." Her eyes flicked to him then, a flicker of something, confusion, maybe even disbelief. The next minutes blurred into a dance of thrusters and sensor sweeps as the pursuers slipped into the asteroid field. They were patient, cutting off escape routes, tightening the noose. Kai's hands moved with muscle memory, twisting the Solace between tumbling rocks, keeping them in the shadows. Then the first shot came. A blast of green energy lit up the dark, slamming into the asteroid just meters from their hull. Shards of molten rock spun past the viewport. The Solace bucked, alarms screaming. Kai gunned the engines, breaking from the shadow and diving deeper into the field. The pursuing ships followed, their sleek frames weaving through the chaos. Liara gripped the back of his chair, her voice calm despite the violence outside. "You can't outrun them forever." "I don't need forever," he said, spinning the ship toward a dense cluster of debris. What happened next was half skill, half madness. Kai threaded the Solace through a collapsing asteroid tunnel, the hull scraping stone. The pursuers tried to follow, but the second ship clipped the wall. The explosion was blinding. The shockwave sent smaller rocks spinning into the path of the remaining vessel, forcing it to pull back. When they finally emerged on the other side, Kai's knuckles were white on the controls. The sensors showed nothing but empty space behind them. For a moment, there was silence. Then Liara spoke, her voice softer than before. "Why?" He glanced at her. "Why what? Why risk your life for me? You don't know me." Kai leaned back, catching his breath. "Maybe I just hate bullies." Or maybe, he hesitated, "maybe I think you're worth the trouble." She looked at him for a long time, as if trying to decide if he meant it. Then she turned away, but not before he saw the faintest shift in her expression, something unguarded, almost human. They drifted for hours after that, running silent until the systems cooled. But somewhere in the back of Kai's mind, a question began to take root. If Liara had seen something the Eladrin were willing to kill her for, what would they do if that truth ever came out? And, more importantly, what exactly had he just gotten himself into? Kai didn't sleep that night. The hum of the Solace's systems was steady, but his mind kept circling the same questions. What had Liara seen? Why was the Union suddenly so interested in her if the Eladrin already wanted her dead? That wasn't how politics worked. Normally, The Union avoided getting involved in another species' internal affairs unless there was something in it for them. When the proximity alarm chirped at 0400 ship time, he wasn't surprised. Trouble had a way of finding them. He slid into the pilot's chair, eyes narrowing at the data scrolling across the display. One ship, bigger than theirs, running on a Union transponder code. Liara appeared behind him as quietly as a shadow. "Union?" she asked. "Yep," he muttered. "And not the friendly kind. Their drive signature says they've been running hard for hours. They're not out here for a pleasure cruise." The comms crackled to life before he could cut the channel. "Unidentified vessel Solace. This is Captain Zarek Holt of the Union Intelligence Directorate. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded." Liara's expression didn't change, but Kai caught the way her fingers tightened against the back of his chair. "If they take me, I won't survive the trip back," she said quietly. He didn't doubt it. The Union wasn't a charity, and their intelligence directorate had a reputation for making problems disappear. Kai opened the channel. "Captain Holt, we're just a civilian freighter passing through. You've got the wrong ship. You're carrying Liara Vesh." Holt's voice cut through without hesitation. "We know it. You know it. Shut down, and maybe I won't have my crew cut your ship to ribbons." There was no bargaining in his tone, just the cold certainty of someone who always got what they wanted. Kai muted the channel. "We could try to run," he said, thinking aloud. "But they've got the drive output to catch us. Or we could fight, but the Solace isn't exactly a warship." Liara's gaze met his. "Or we could find an ally." "That's a nice thought," he said. "But I don't see anyone lining up to get between us and Union intelligence." She tilted her head. "You're in the fringe. You just have to know who to ask." 20 minutes later, the Union ship was still tracking them when Kai swung the Solace toward a massive, fractured moon that hung like a shattered jewel in the void. The navigation charts marked it as abandoned, but Liara guided him through a series of winding canyons in its surface until a hidden docking port came into view. The moment they landed, the outer doors slid shut and heavy clamps locked onto the Solace. Kai's hand went to his sidearm. "You sure about this?" "Yes," she said, already moving toward the ramp. The figure waiting for them in the docking bay was unlike anything Kai had seen before, tall, scaled, and with a face marked by glowing blue sigils. He wore no visible weapons, but something about his posture made Kai's instincts sharpen. "Liara Vesh," the alien said, his voice deep and resonant. "You've been gone a long time." "Not long enough, Dren," she replied. Kai glanced between them. "Friend of yours?" Dren's sharp, tooth-lined smile made it hard to tell. "That depends on what you're here for." Before Kai could speak, the docking bay lights flickered red, and the walls trembled with the impact of weapons fire. "They found us," Kai said. Dren didn't flinch. "Then you're lucky you came to me. Let's see if Union intelligence likes fighting in my territory." Outside, the sensors screamed as the Union ship descended into the moon's atmosphere. Dren's people moved fast, sleek, four-legged drones spilling from hidden compartments in the walls, weapons charging with a high-pitched hum. Kai took the co-pilot seat beside Dren in the control tower, watching as the drones swarmed into the canyons. "You didn't tell me you had an army in here," he muttered. Dren's grin widened. "I didn't tell you a lot of things." The Union ship came into view on the screens, its cannons spitting green fire at the drones. Explosions lit the canyon walls, dust clouds rising like phantom waves. Kai could see Holt's strategy. Overwhelm quickly, force the defenders into retreat. But Dren fought differently. His drones moved like predators, striking from shadows, vanishing before the enemy could target them. Liara stood at the center of it all, calm despite the chaos. "He won't stop," she said quietly. "Holt has orders to take me alive or not at all. He'll burn this place to the ground if he has to." Kai's jaw tightened. "Then we make sure he doesn't get the chance." Dren's eyes flicked to him, something calculating in the look. "You're willing to stand against the Union for her?" Kai didn't look away. "Yeah, I guess I am." The alien's grin this time wasn't sharp, it was approving. "Then let's end this." The control tower filled with the sound of weapons fire as Dren coordinated his defenses. Kai's hands moved instinctively over the targeting systems, backing the drones with precision strikes from the Solace's guns. It wasn't enough to destroy the Union ship, but it was enough to drive it back, limping out of the atmosphere with smoke trailing from its hull. When it was over, the docking bay fell silent except for the low thrum of the Solace's cooling engines. Dren turned to Liara. If you're here, it means the Council's lies have reached the Union. You'll need more than just a ship to survive what's coming. Liara nodded once. Then we start now. Kai knew then that whatever her secret was, it was bigger than exile, bigger than politics. And somehow, he had just stepped into the center of it. Kai followed Liara and Dren through the winding corridors of the hidden base. The walls were carved directly into the moon's stone, lit by strips of pale blue light that gave everything a cold, underwater glow. He could hear the muffled sounds of machinery deeper inside, the low hum of power generators, the clank of repair crews working on damaged drones. Dren moved with the sure step of someone who knew every inch of this place. We're secure for now, he said, though his tone carried a warning. The Union ship will call for reinforcements. We have hours, maybe less. Kai glanced at Liara. She had kept her composure through everything. The pursuit, the battle, but now there was a tension in her shoulders that hadn't been there before. I think it's time I heard the truth, Kai said finally. What's worth killing you over? And why are they so desperate to keep it quiet? Liara stopped walking. For a moment, she didn't look at either of them. Then she turned slowly, her silver eyes locking on his. I was a translator, she said. The youngest ever assigned to the Eladrin High Council. My work was to interpret messages from the other worlds in the Union. But one day, a transmission came through on a secure channel. A channel no one outside the highest ranks should have been able to access. It wasn't meant for me. I heard it anyway. Her voice was calm, but there was a heaviness in it now. It was proof, she continued, that the Council had made a pact with the Karath Dominion. You know what the Karath are, Kai? He knew. Everyone did. The Karath didn't negotiate, they conquered. Entire worlds vanished under their rule. The last war against them had cost billions of lives. They weren't just negotiating, Liara said. They were planning to give them access to Union space. Trading planets, people, for weapons and resources the Council could use to take control of the Union itself. Kai let that sink in. So the Karath would invade, and the Council would just hand them what they wanted? They would hand them us, Liara said quietly. Our worlds, our cities, and in return, they would rule what was left. I reported it to my superiors. 3 days later, my name was erased from the citizen rolls, my bank account seized, and I was placed on the first transport to Valus Prime. They didn't even bother to hold a trial. Kai exhaled slowly, the pieces falling into place. And if that message ever gets out, they lose everything, she finished. Their power, their alliance, maybe their lives. Dren's deep voice rumbled from behind them. And now the Union knows enough to be dangerous. If they get her, they'll bury the truth as quickly as the Council would. Different masters, same chains. Kai rubbed the back of his neck. So basically, every powerful player in the galaxy wants you dead or hidden away forever. Not every player, Dren said. There are still those who would fight if they knew the truth. The problem is reaching them without being killed first. Liara looked at Kai, her gaze steady. That's why I needed a pilot. Not just any pilot. Someone who can disappear between systems. Someone the Union doesn't already have in their pocket. Kai almost laughed. You could have led with that instead of letting me find out after half the galaxy tried to blow me up. For the first time since he'd met her, Liara smiled. Just a small curve of her lips, but it was there. Dren moved toward a heavy door at the end of the hall. If we're going to get this information into the right hands, we need to move now. I can give you coordinates to an old contact in the Varic Belt. She's got the reach to spread your message and the nerve to take the risk. Let me guess, Kai said, following. Getting there isn't going to be simple. Dren's grin showed sharp teeth. Nothing worth doing ever is. The door opened onto a control chamber filled with holographic displays and flickering star maps. Dren keyed in a sequence, and one of the maps zoomed in on a cluster of stars far from Union-controlled space. This is your destination. But the belt is crawling with scavengers, mercenaries, and worse. You'll need to avoid them all if you want to make it alive. Kai stared at the map for a moment, committing it to memory. Then he turned to Liara. You ready for this? Her eyes softened just slightly. I was ready the moment I stepped onto your ship. An alarm blared before either of them could speak again. Red lights pulsed along the walls, and Dren's drones shifted into combat mode. He glanced at the readouts. Union reinforcements. 3 ships this time. They found us. Kai's instincts surged to life. Then we'd better move. Liara stepped in close, her voice low but certain. If we make it out of this, Kai, the galaxy will never be the same. He believed her, and for the first time, he wanted that change as much as she did. The docking bay shook with the first impact. Dust rained from the ceiling, and the sharp, metallic screech of stressed hull plating echoed through the chamber. Outside, the reinforced blast doors trembled under the pounding of Union fire. Kai sprinted for the Solace, his boots hammering the deck, Liara right behind him. Drin was already barking orders into a comm link, sending his drones to the outer defenses. The blue sigils on his skin pulsed brighter with every command. "They've deployed boarding craft," Drin said, breaking into a run beside them. "If they breach the bay, you won't make it out." "Then we don't give them the chance," Kai replied. The Solace's ramp hissed open. Kai vaulted inside, heading straight for the pilot's seat. Liara strapped herself into the co-pilot's chair without being told. Outside, the heavy clamps holding the Solace in place released with a shuddering clunk. "Shields at full," Kai muttered. "Drin, I hope your drones can keep their attention for a few minutes." "They'll do more than that." Drin's voice came through the comm, steady despite the chaos. "But you'd better run fast, human." The blast doors finally gave way, molten fragments flying inward. Through the viewports, Kai caught a glimpse of Union assault troopers in dark armor pouring into the bay. Green weapons fire lit the air. Drin's drones surged forward to meet them, metal bodies moving with animal precision. "Punch it," Liara said calmly, though her eyes never left the advancing soldiers. Kai didn't need the reminder. The Solace's engines roared, blue-white light flooding the bay as the ship lifted off. In the next heartbeat, they shot forward, skimming over the heads of Union troops, blasting through the ruined doors into open space. The moment they cleared the moon's gravity well, the sensors lit up, 3 Union ships, all closing fast. They had heavier armor, longer guns, and enough drive power to run the Solace down in minutes. Kai angled toward the jagged rings of asteroids spinning just beyond the moon's shadow. "They can't hit what they can't see," he said, diving into the field. The asteroids here weren't drifting lazily. They spun in chaotic arcs, colliding and splitting, throwing clouds of razor-sharp debris into the void. One wrong turn, and the Solace would be nothing but scrap. The Union ships followed anyway. Their forward cannons spat fire through the rocks, explosions flaring like silent storms. Shards of metal and stone ricocheted off the Solace's shields. Liara's hands gripped the edge of her console. "They're hurting us," she said suddenly. Kai checked the scopes. She was right. The Union ships weren't firing to kill. They were cutting off escape routes, pushing the Solace toward a narrow gap in the asteroid belt. A choke point. "They've got something waiting on the other side," Kai muttered. "Then we don't go through," Liara said. He glanced at her. "You have another idea?" She nodded toward a dense cluster of spinning rock ahead, one so thick it was almost impossible to see through. "There's a path. I can guide you." Kai almost laughed. "Through that? We'll be dust." Her voice didn't waver. "Trust me." For reasons he couldn't quite explain, he did. He cut power to half the thrusters, letting the Solace drift as Liara called out precise course corrections. 3 degrees starboard, 2 forward, roll 90. They slipped through narrow gaps between spinning boulders, sometimes close enough that the rocks scraped sparks off the shields. Behind them, the Union ships hesitated. The field was too tight for their heavier hulls. By the time they tried to follow, the Solace was already gone, slipping out the far side into open space. The scopes showed no immediate pursuit. Kai leaned back, letting out the breath he'd been holding. "I'm starting to think you're more than just a translator." Liara's gaze stayed fixed on the stars ahead. "I learned to navigate before I learned to read," she said softly. "Sometimes you survive by knowing which paths no one else dares to take." He didn't press her. Instead, he set a course for the coordinates Drin had given them, the Varick Belt. But he knew the Union wouldn't give up that easily. And he also knew that when they got there, they'd be walking into the territory of the Belt's most dangerous mercenary faction. People who could just as easily sell them to the highest bidder as help them. Still, there was no turning back now. The Varick Belt unfolded before them like a shattered crown, hundreds of jagged asteroids and debris fields orbiting a dying star. The light from the star was a deep, sickly red, casting long shadows over the drifting rocks. In the heart of it all was a single, massive structure, half space station, half warship, anchored to the largest asteroid in the belt. Kai had heard stories about this place. The Citadel of Irith. A fortress built from the bones of ships that had tried, and failed, to cross the belt without permission. Every hull plate in its walls was a warning, every cannon a promise. This was the home of the Keshri Syndicate, the most feared mercenary faction in this quadrant. They'll know we're here the moment we cross their perimeter, Kai said, adjusting the Solace's course. They already know, Liara replied. She was right. The sensors pinged with multiple lock-ons, and a voice came through the comms, rough and low. Unmarked vessel, you are entering Syndicate territory. State your business or be turned to scrap. Kai opened the channel. Looking for an audience with your leader. We've got information that's worth your time and your protection. There was a pause, followed by a short, humorless laugh. Protection comes at a price. Docket Bay 6. Don't make us nervous. The channel went dead. As the Solace eased toward the Citadel, Kai caught glimpses of other ships docked along its hull. Heavy frigates bristling with weapons, sleek interceptors marked with the Syndicate's crimson sigil. A few were clearly salvaged from past battles, their original markings barely visible beneath layers of armored plating. Base 6 was a cavernous hangar lined with Syndicate fighters and armed guards. The moment the Solace's ramp lowered, a squad of armored figures approached, their insect-like helmets reflecting the red light of the dying star. Their leader was easy to spot, taller than the rest, her armor black with gold trim, her stride confident. She removed her helmet as she reached them, revealing a face framed by ridged, dark green skin and sharp amber eyes. I'm Vera Kesh, she said. You've got 5 minutes to convince me not to throw you back into the belt. Kai inclined his head slightly. We're here because my passenger has information that could shift the balance of power in half the galaxy. Vera's gaze slid to Liara, who met it without flinching. I know who you are, Vera said. The exiled Eladrin girl. The one both the Council and the Union want dead. Liara's voice was calm. Then you know why I'm here. I have proof of a pact between the Eladrin Council and the Korath Dominion. I need it transmitted to the outer worlds before either side buries it. Vera studied her for a long moment. And why should the Syndicate risk war with both the Council and the Union for you? Because if the Korath breach the Union, they won't stop there, Liara said. They'll come for the belt too. And they won't negotiate. You'll either be destroyed or enslaved. I'm offering you a chance to stop them before they start. Vera's expression didn't change, but Kai caught the flicker in her eyes. A calculation, a weighing of risks. Finally, she said, I'll help you. But I want something first. Kai's stomach sank. What's the price? Vera leaned in slightly. There's a shipment of Eladrin weapons moving through a guarded convoy 3 systems from here. Take it. Bring it to me. Then I'll spread your message to every contact I have. Kai frowned. That convoy will be crawling with guards. Probably Union escorts too. That's why I'm asking you, Vera said with a faint smile. You've already slipped past the Union once. Do it again, and you'll have my full support. Liara's gaze met Kai's, and in that unspoken moment, they both knew there was no choice. Without Vera's reach, the truth would die in the dark. When do we leave? Kai asked. Vera's smile widened. Now. The convoy was moving through the Dravik Passage, a narrow stretch of space flanked by volatile nebulae that interfered with most long-range sensors. It was the perfect route for discreet weapons transport, and an even better trap for anyone foolish enough to try and intercept them. Kai guided the Solace in the shadow of a drifting asteroid, its surface pitted with craters and frozen gas. The engines ran at minimal power, cloaked by the asteroid's magnetic field. From here, the convoy was just a faint cluster of sensor blips ahead, gliding steadily along their route. 3 freighters, Kai murmured, scanning the readings. 2 Union escorts, probably Corvette class. That's more protection than I'd like. Liara was at his side, her eyes locked on the displays. They'll have patrol drones too. The Eladrin use them for close defense, fast, unpredictable, and armed with plasma cutters. If they detect us, they won't call for backup. They'll just slice us apart. Kai gave a short, humorless chuckle. Good thing I've got a few tricks they haven't seen yet. He tapped the controls, and the Solace's hull shimmered briefly as its chameleon plating engaged, bending light around the ship. From a distance, they would appear as just another drifting piece of rock. Once we get close enough, Kai said, I'll slip under the lead freighter's sensor arc and latch onto the undercarriage. From there, We cut into the cargo bay and Liara's hand tightened on the console. Wait, look at the lead freighter's drive signature. Kai adjusted the scan. The energy output wasn't consistent with a standard freighter. It was running far hotter, with a secondary power source that seemed to pulse at irregular intervals. That's not a weapons freighter, Liara said slowly. That's a prison transport. Kai's gut tightened. Vera said she wanted Eladrin weapons. Why would she send us after a prison ship? Before Liara could answer, the Solace's proximity alarm began to chirp softly. A small object was breaking formation from the convoy. A drone, gliding silently toward their position. They've spotted something, Kai muttered. Could be a routine sweep. Could be we're blown. He killed the engines entirely, letting the asteroid's slow spin carry them into deeper shadow. The drone passed close enough that Kai could see its spindly legs twitching in the darkness, the faint red glow of its optical sensors scanning the void. It drifted past. Kai exhaled slowly. We keep moving. Minutes later, they were latched beneath the lead freighter, the Solace's magnetic clamps holding them fast. Through the hull sensors, Kai could detect faint life signs, dozens of them, all contained in a central compartment. Liara's expression was grim. They're prisoners. Eladrin, Karath, even some humans. Mixed races. Whoever's running this ship, they're not transporting criminals. They're trafficking people. The plan shifted instantly in Kai's mind. He had no intention of handing over prisoners to Vera, not for any deal. But freeing them meant breaking whatever fragile trust they had with the Syndicate. We go in quiet, Kai said, grabbing his breather mask. We find out what's really going on before we decide. Inside the freighter, the air was stale and tinged with the acrid bite of overworked filtration systems. The corridors were dim, the hum of the engines thrumming through the walls. They found the holding cells quickly. The prisoners were crammed behind energy barriers, their faces hollow with exhaustion. A tall Eladrin male stepped forward as they approached, his eyes narrowing at the sight of Liara. You, he rasped. You're the exile. Liara froze. Veshtar, she whispered. Kai glanced between them. You two know each other? He's my father, Liara said quietly. Veshtar's eyes were hard, unreadable, the deep silver irises catching the flicker of the energy barrier. For a long moment, there was nothing but the low hum of the cell field and the distant throb of the freighter's engines. I thought I'd never see you again, he said finally, his voice a brittle mix of disbelief and bitterness. I hoped I wouldn't. Liara's lips parted, but whatever words she'd been about to speak faltered. You think I betrayed you, she said, her voice low. You think I betrayed all of us. Veshtar's jaw clenched. You didn't just betray us. You gave the Union the codes to our defense grid. Thousands died in the bombardment. Entire districts burned. The council had no choice but to exile you. That's not what happened, Liara shot back, a crack of steel in her tone. I was framed, father, and you were too proud to see it. Kai stepped between them slightly, sensing the way the other prisoners were now watching intently. This wasn't just a reunion. It was a wound being ripped open. We don't have time for family therapy, Kai said evenly. Someone on this ship is running an interspecies slave trade. I'm guessing you're not here voluntarily, which means you know something. So talk. Veshtar's eyes flicked to him with disdain, but he answered. The Eladrin Council sent me to negotiate with a Karath war clan. The talks were a cover. The Union was planning to abduct both delegations and remove us from the galactic stage entirely. They didn't want an alliance. They wanted two potential threats erased. Liara stared. You're saying this was all the Union? I'm saying, Veshtar replied coldly, that the Union works through shadows and proxies. The crew of the ship? They're Syndicate mercenaries under Union payroll. The prisoners are high-value targets, politicians, scientists, strategists. Every one of us is someone they want silenced or leveraged. Kai's mind was already racing. If this was true, then Vera hadn't just sent him for weapons. She'd sent him into the middle of a political purge. How many guards? He asked. Veshtar's lip curled. 4 in the corridor outside. 8 more rotating through the decks. And the warden? He's no mercenary. He's Union security, and he'll fight to the death before letting this ship fall. Kai nodded once. Then we make sure he doesn't get the chance. Liara stepped closer to the barrier. Father, if I free you, if I free all of you, will you help us expose the Union's involvement? Veshtar held her gaze for a long, searching moment. Finally, he said, if you free me, I will see the truth brought to light. And I will hear your side of the story. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a crack in the wall. Liara keyed in a code from her wrist interface, and the barrier shimmered before dropping with a faint hiss. The prisoners surged forward, but Kai raised a hand sharply. Not yet. You run now. The guards will cut you down before you reach the docking bay. We move when I say. He tossed a small comm beacon to Veshtar. You're on point. Keep them quiet. I'll handle the guards. The first guard never saw him coming. Kai slipped from the shadows, his stun blade flashing in the dim corridor. The second dropped before he could shout. Liara covered his flank, her plasma pistol barking in bursts that left smoking holes in the walls. Within minutes, the lower deck was theirs. The prisoners moved in tight formation, guided by Veshtar, and kept in line by Kai's sharp commands. But the warden was waiting for them at the final hatch, an imposing figure in Union black armor, his visor gleaming red. He didn't bother with threats. He simply raised a massive pulse rifle and opened fire. The corridor erupted in chaos. Plasma bolts screamed past, slamming into the bulkheads and showering sparks. Kai dove behind a support strut, returning fire in tight, precise bursts. Liara rolled to cover, her pistol flashing. The warden's armor absorbed most of the hits. He advanced slowly, each step a booming echo. Then Veshtar did something Kai didn't expect. He stepped into the open, no weapon in hand, and shouted in the old Eladrin tongue. The warden hesitated for a fraction of a second, just long enough for Kai to slide out, line up his shot, and blast the power coupler on the warden's rifle. The weapon exploded in his hands, knocking him back. In that instant, Liara fired a single, clean shot into the gap at his collar seal. The warden collapsed without a sound. The hatch was theirs. The hatch hissed open, revealing the docking bay bathed in cold blue emergency light. The freighter's main doors were sealed shut, and the air smelled of burnt metal and coolant. Kai's ship, the Solace, sat near the far end, its hull peppered with scorch marks from earlier skirmishes. Between them and the ship were two automated turrets tracking their movement, and a team of 4 armored mercenaries already taking aim. Down! Kai barked, pulling Liara behind a stack of cargo crates just as the first volley shredded the air above them. Veshtar crouched low, scanning the bay. We can't make it across like this. The turrets will cut us to ribbons before we're halfway. Kai's eyes narrowed. Not if we blind them. He dug into his belt pouch and pulled out 2 smoke dispersal pods, military grade, fast spreading, thick enough to choke a sensor feed. With a flick of his wrist, he rolled them across the deck. They detonated in puffs of dense, white vapor, flooding the bay with swirling clouds. The turrets whirred, their targeting systems sputtering as they searched for heat signatures. That was all the opening Kai needed. Move, he shouted, and the group sprinted forward. Liara and Kai took the lead, laying down suppressive fire while Veshtar herded the prisoners. The mercenaries fired wildly into the smoke, their plasma bolts lighting the haze in deadly flashes. One of the prisoners stumbled, crying out as a bolt grazed her leg. Liara was at her side in an instant, hauling her upright without breaking stride. By the time they reached the Solace's boarding ramp, 2 of the mercenaries lay unconscious, courtesy of Kai's stun blade, and the others had retreated behind the remaining turret. Get everyone inside, Kai ordered, slamming his palm against the ship's security panel. The ramp clanged shut behind the last prisoner. Inside, the Solace roared to life, her engines vibrating through the deck. Liara jumped into the co-pilot's seat while Kai strapped in at the helm. Brace yourselves, he warned, punching the controls. The docking bay doors blazed open under the Solace's forward cannons, and they shot into the star-speckled void. Almost immediately, pursuit ships peeled away from the freighter, sleek Union interceptors, their engines glowing like angry stars. They're faster than us, Liara said grimly, checking the scanners. They'll be on us in less than a minute. Kai's hands danced across the controls, bringing up a holographic map of the sector. Then we make sure they can't follow. He dove the Solace toward a dense asteroid field, the kind navigators avoided at all costs. The Union ships hesitated for only a moment before plunging in after them. The chase became a deadly ballet, sharp turns, rolling dives, near misses as chunks of rock the size of small moons hurtled past. Kai skimmed so close to one asteroid that the hull scraped, sending a metallic shriek through the cabin. "Are you trying to kill us?" Liara shouted over the alarms. "Only if it kills them too," Kai shot back. Veshtar stumbled into the cockpit, gripping the doorway. "There's a mining station in the heart of this field, abandoned, shielded from long-range scans. If we can reach it, we might lose them." Kai glanced at Liara. "Coordinates." She punched them in, and the Solace veered sharply toward a shadowed cluster of rocks. Behind them, one of the Union ships clipped an asteroid and vanished in a silent bloom of fire. The rest pressed on, but their formation was breaking. As they closed in on the mining station's dark silhouette, Kai cut the engines and let the Solace drift into the shadow of the largest asteroid. The Union ships streaked past, scanners sweeping, but the station's natural magnetic interference masked the Solace completely. One by one, the hunters peeled away, convinced their prey had slipped into deeper space. When the last blip vanished from the radar, a deep, heavy silence filled the cockpit. Liara exhaled shakily. "We made it." Veshtar's gaze was fixed on the stars beyond the viewport. "For now, but if the Union truly wants us dead, this was only the first strike." Kai leaned back in his seat, his mind already turning. "Then we strike back harder." The way Veshtar looked at him then, half wary, half impressed, told Kai this uneasy alliance was only beginning. The mining station's corridors echoed with the sound of their footsteps, hollow and ghost-like. Rusted bulkheads loomed on either side, flickering lights casting long, jagged shadows. Dust floated lazily in the low gravity, disturbed only by their movement. They found an old control room at the station's heart. The walls were lined with inactive monitors, their cracked screens frozen mid-image from decades ago. Kai brushed the dust from a central console and powered it up using the Solace's auxiliary link. Static flared, then faded, revealing a holographic map of the surrounding sectors. Liara stepped closer, her expression tightening. "There," she said, pointing at a red-marked system far beyond Union space. "That's where they sent the transmission ordering my exile. If we go there, we'll find the one who made the call." Kai studied her face. "You're sure?" Her voice was steady but low. "I know the encryption signature. It's from the High Council, but twisted. Someone forged orders in their name." Veshtar's mandibles clicked. "The High Council is untouchable. Even if you find proof, they'll destroy you before the truth spreads." Kai's lips curved into a thin smile. "Then we don't give them time to react." The journey to the red-marked system took 2 standard days. The Solace ran silent most of the way, drifting on minimal power to avoid detection. During those long hours, Liara finally told Kai the whole truth, how she'd discovered a secret Union weapons program, one designed to wipe out entire species in minutes. She tried to stop it, but someone high up had framed her for treason and cast her out, making her a fugitive on every civilized world. Kai listened without interrupting. By the time she finished, his hands were tight fists. "They built a weapon like that, and they think they can just bury the proof." "They can," Liara said bitterly, "unless we make it impossible." When they arrived, the system's only inhabited world glowed faintly beneath a swirling atmosphere of crimson clouds. Orbiting above it was a vast space station, larger than most cities, ringed with heavy defense cannons. "That's where the signal came from," Liara confirmed. Kai looked at the station's layout on the scanner and spotted something. A maintenance ring on the far side, shielded but poorly guarded. "That's our way in." They suited up, taking only what they could carry: stealth armor, data spikes, and weapons set to stun. Veshtar stayed aboard the Solace, ready to pull them out the instant things went wrong. Inside the station, the air was crisp and cold, smelling faintly of sterilizers. The hallways gleamed, their polished floors a stark contrast to the rust of the mining outpost. It didn't take long to find the source of the forged orders, a secure data vault buried in the central spire. But it was what they found inside the vault that changed everything. A single figure stood there, waiting. Tall, broad-shouldered, clad in ceremonial armor with a white crest of hair. High Counselor Sarek, one of the most powerful figures in the Union. "I knew you'd come," Sarek said, his voice smooth and unhurried. "And I knew he'd bring you." His eyes flicked to Kai. "You framed her," Kai said flatly. Sarek's mouth curved into something that was not quite a smile. "She discovered a truth not meant for fragile ears. The weapon she feared? It will unite the galaxy under our rule." There will be no wars. No chaos. Only order. Liara's voice shook, not with fear, but fury. You'll burn entire civilizations just to keep power. Sarek stepped closer, lowering his voice. You have no proof the people will believe. And even if you did, I would see you both dead before it spread. Kai didn't move. His hand hovered near the data spike in his belt. Maybe we don't need the people to believe. Maybe we just need the weapon to disappear. Sarek laughed softly. Impossible. The weapon is already complete, hidden in a vault deeper than you can imagine. Liara's eyes met Kai's. Something unspoken passed between them. And then, without warning, she lunged forward, driving her stunblade towards Sarek. The counselor blocked her easily, but Kai used the opening to slam the data spike into the vault's main console. The spike's AI, a war-era program Kai had salvaged years ago, spread like wildfire, tearing through the station's security systems. Red alarms blared as the AI found the coordinates of the weapon and broadcast them to every independent resistance cell in the galaxy. Sarek's eyes widened. You fool. Kai cut him off with a single punch that sent the counselor crashing into the wall. Liara grabbed the spike, now glowing red-hot, and they ran. Back aboard the Solace, Veshtar was already powering the engines. Every resistance channel is talking about you, he said. They know where the weapon is. They're moving to dismantle it. Liara slumped into the co-pilot's seat, her voice quiet. We didn't just save me. We might have saved billions. Kai glanced at her, then out at the stars ahead. One fight at a time. But this one we won. As the Solace vanished into hyperspace, the first sparks of rebellion flared across the galaxy. And for the first time since her exile, Liara allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, fate had other plans all along.